Hey guys, Brett here, connecting from UbiCentral, and today I'm going to be counting down 5 different things Watch Dogs did better than Watch Dogs 2. Now, with any sequel, you would expect it to improve on the original in a lot of ways, which Watch Dogs 2 did for the most part. However, there are still some elements of the first game that I definitely prefer, so with that said, let's get started with my list. Storytelling. So, in the first Watch Dogs, you play as vigilante Aiden Pierce. This story is a fairly generic revenge story, but you do meet some interesting characters along the way. T-Bone, for example, a legendary hacker who loves to blow shit up. Clara Lil, a member of a secret hacking group called DedSec. And let's not forget about one of the most underrated villains of all time, Lucky Quinn. Now, I'm gonna be honest, Watch Dogs isn't a perfect story, it's not even close. But the storytelling in the game makes you care about the characters. When Clara died, that was actually a really impactful moment. When Jackson ran away by himself, I was worried. And when Nikki was kidnapped, I knew from a story perspective, it made Aiden kind of go crazy. And that's not to say there aren't some throwaway characters like Iraq and Maurice, but for the most part, you care about most of the characters, or at the very least, find them entertaining or compelling. Watch Dogs 2, on the other hand, didn't have nearly as good as a story. I just couldn't connect to Marcus because we didn't know anything about him. Throughout the story, they hint at his family, but we never get to see them or find out anything interesting. We also learn he was wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit, but that's all we know. We don't ever find out what that crime was, and to be honest, it never plays a major role in the story either. Horatio, while being a good side character, didn't have nearly enough time to develop. DedSec, with the exception of Wrench and Marcus, didn't really get enough screen time, and that's just because there's so many characters. DedSec alone has like 6 main characters. Then there's Lenny and Dushan, and not to mention all the different tech companies. The story just has so many characters that you don't end up caring for most of them. Not to mention, since the story isn't linear, it just wasn't as interestingly told as it could have been. Online. Now this may surprise people, but hear me out. After playing both of the multiplayer modes in these games, it's clear to me that Watch Dogs 1 did it better. And let's not forget, it actually had all the modes at launch, whereas Watch Dogs 2 eventually added some after release. But let's look at some of these modes for comparison. Online hacking is basically the same in both games, with the exception of one thing: the drone. In Watch Dogs 2, you had the ability to use your drone to spot an enemy who's hacking you. As you would imagine, this removes a certain level of intensity and challenge that was present in the first game. And speaking of the drone, Showdown, the multiplayer deathmatch mode, is basically unplayable as enemies will drop grenades from their drone over and over and over again. Online decryption in the first game is a way better mode because you have to pick a loadout and it's fairly balanced. Also, free roam lobbies. For some reason, you can have more players in a lobby in Watch Dogs 1 than Watch Dogs 2. So, there's that. Nighttime. Now, I know a lot of people probably weren't expecting something like this to be on the list, but just look for yourself. Here's a picture of Watch Dogs 1 at night, and here's a picture of Watch Dogs 2 at night. Keep in mind, these are taken at the same time in-game. For some reason, Watch Dogs 2 is still pretty bright outside, even though it's supposed to be dark out. I know some people probably won't care about this, but there's no denying when it's dark out, Watch Dogs 1 looks way better, especially when there's rain out as well. Mini games. To be honest, there is really no comparison because for some reason Watch Dogs 2 really didn't have any. As I've mentioned in a few videos now, Cash Run would have been the perfect minigame for Watch Dogs 2 since parkour was improved so much. Digital trips also fit the tone of the second game as well, so it was surprising not to see any of them return. And then there's also things like Invasion, Poker, Chess, and the Cup game. Now, I'm not gonna lie, some of these were useless, but it still added to the worlds, and at least you had the option to play them. In Watch Dogs 2, there's just no comparison. Blackouts. Blackouts in Watch Dogs 1 were so intense and satisfying to use. A lot of this just had to do with the build-up and the story. T-Bone always talked about how causing a blackout was a mistake, so obviously for us players, we wanted to try it ourselves. And it just felt so good. The sound effect that plays, the lights turning off, and the sky actually being dark, all of this plays together to create an amazing blackout. Now, let's compare that to Watch Dogs 2. I mean, I may be nitpicking here, but it just doesn't feel or look as good as the first game. And there's my list for 5 things that Watch Dogs did better than its sequel. As I mentioned at the start of this video, Watch Dogs 2 did actually improve on a ton of things such as hacking, parkour, customization, driving, and actually adding dogs to the game. But anyways, I thought this would still make an interesting video. As always, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments down below, and I'll see you all later.